The story begins in the late 1950s to early 1960s. Not in San Diego, but in Ensenada, in Mexico, in Baja California.
Mm-hmm.
For those less familiar with sort of maps and geography and whatnot, especially if you're not based here in the US or North America, this is going to be that wonderful peninsular strip of land that comes south of California that's, I think it is still attached to Mexico by a strip of land, but it's kind of more in contact with California and the US. Ensenada there being sort of the central north part of that territory. The cradle for this creation was the famous Mercado Negro, the black market, a loose cluster of around 20 stands near where there's this big business today called Agencia Arjona, which seems to be like a one-stop solution. Have you ever heard of this company?
No.
So it seems to be a one-stop solution for anything related to fish, and whether you're like fishermen or they do the fishing, the selling of fish, the distribution. So they're this one massive conglomerate, I think, now.
Okay.
So where that building is now, that was the famous black market, obviously, as fish markets do, dealing in fresh catches from the day, and regional street food built around it just to sort of serve the people working there, shopping there. Originally, the tacos served there were much more meat-leaning.
Okay.
Fish didn't work its way into the equation until a little bit later.
It seems odd.
Yeah.
You got all this fish laying around. Make me a steak taco.
It is really strange. But that's just because I think people hadn't thought to do this preparation yet.
Sure.
This was also the cradle of another famous dish called caldo de siete mares. Stew of
Seven Seas?
Stew of the Seven Seas.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm brushing up on my Spanish.
And so locals remember someone, and this is a name that's widely reported, Mario El Bachi Gualato. Many locals point to Mario as being the first modern fish taco stand.
Okay.
But interestingly, the fish tacos that he first served were grilled and not battered, and he used cheap, plentiful Angelito, Pacific Angel shark, and topped it with nothing else than salsa bandera, a.k.a. pico de gallo. So that would be 1960, around the time where he started selling those fish tacos.
So shark tacos, which I can kind of understand. You know, I grew up on the coast, and we would catch sharks off the pier when I was a kid, Makos. And once the shark is out of the water and dispatched, you have to butcher it right away. They release ammonia throughout their flesh. All sharks release ammonia throughout their flesh upon demise, and you have to butcher right away on site, or the flesh will have that ammonia smell and thus flavor. So I can see that if he was catching a lot of them, or if they were being caught a lot and butchered right on the boats, and he was right there, then it's also like, well, the clock's ticking on how fast I got to use it as well. So let's get it on the grill. Let's make this taco and sell these to these guys here who are doing all this fishing.
Let's get it into people's mouths as soon as we can, yeah. This specific type, the Angelito, I believe is lower on the ammonium scale than other sharks. Looking into it, that was kind of news to me. I've never butchered fresh, sharks or whatnot.
Yeah.
Or mungered.
Well, I tried to dance around it, but I'll lean into it a little bit. Sharks don't have a urinary system. So all the waste of what would be their urine seeps out through their flesh. And once their demise happens, it happens kind of automatically.
Gotcha. So anatomically, there must be something specific to this one. Also, local variety.
Sure.
But otherwise, this is a fish with a sort of slightly sweet flavor. It's lean but firm. Can dry out quite easily if you are not careful with the cooking. But will retain its sort of structure and stuff, which makes sense if you're grilling or if you're deep frying. The taco, the Baja fish taco as we know it today, then evolved through a few other people at this market and beyond. 1963, Zeferino Mancia Fortuna is credited as the first to put batter on the fish. But I don't think deep frying it in the way that we would expect right now. There's a different pan and a different technique. And then someone called Pedro Alvarado, whose stand had opened by 1961, was the one who pioneered the sort of frying technique. So Zeferino brings the batter, Pedro brings the frying technique. And then when the market closed in 1967, it was shut down for hygiene and sanitary reasons. Can be an issue when it comes to these markets. The taqueros scattered. Some stayed in the city, others moved to different parts of Baja California, including Socorro Negrete Rivera, who had taken over Mario's stand in 1963 and carried her fish tacos south to somewhere called San Felipe, which will become another important part of this story. Before we make the San Felipe connection, there's another connection to explore.
Okay.
Why the batter? Where does the batter come from?
I don't know, but when you said that the first guy, I forgot his name, Fortuna?
Zeferino.
Zeferino.
Fortuna, correct, yeah.
Yeah. It stuck in my head because it sounded like his name was Fortunate. And I was like, all right, Fortunate. He's the fortunate one. You said it was a different batter. I envisioned immediately that sort of more eggy batter that goes on like chile rellenos, right? And I bet then the next guy came along and was like, well, let's make this thing a little more crispy instead of more like, I don't know how to describe that batter. It's more eggy. It's like the same batter used on French toast.
Yeah.
It's not going to have that crisp. No matter how long you keep it in the fryer, it's not going to come out crisp. It's going to come out like sort of that sort of tender, sort of soggy crisp is what Dave Chang calls it. when he talks about like General Tso's chicken or things like that, they're things that are like, it's just never going to get crunchy crisp. So I'm curious if that was the leap. And then flour's a little bit more readily available. Maybe it's a little bit more carry-aroundable.
Well,
especially as they scattered, you said they had to move out of the thing, and I guess, and that's surely how it got propagated as well, right? If we were concentrated, people were coming here and they were getting them, or they weren't. But then we spread out and we brought them to the people.
So I wonder whether, and this is where this question comes in, which is the Japanese question. Ensenada took in many Japanese immigrants during the early 20th century, and of course, with them, they would have brought such cooking techniques as tempura. So I wonder whether, and I don't know what Zeferino Fortuna's batter was, I wonder whether that was an evolution of that soggy, crispy batter that you talked about, inspired by some tempura techniques to bring the crispiness to this, probably because they thought as well, as we explored in the fish and chips episode, you're steaming the fish inside, so you have more control over the cooking and less chance of overcooking it, especially if it's that shark. Right. People believe this as a plausible theory, but no one's, as far as I can tell, been able to make a direct connection and say for sure that this is taken from Japanese tempura. Seems plausible to me.
Sure. Everybody was there.
Yeah.
We're going to, look over each other's shoulders. We're going to look at each other's paper.
Exactly.
I'm cheating.
Everyone's copying each other.
I'm cheating off your paper.
So San Felipe, that place further southeast of Ensenada that I mentioned earlier, in the early 1970s, someone called Ralph Rubio, a San Diego...
This is the story that I couldn't avoid. It's popped up everywhere I looked.
Yeah. And they do a pretty good job of marketing it.
Oh, I'm sure.
A San Diego state student visits San Felipe during spring break and discovers fish tacos. Most likely that stand that was taken there earlier, or one of the stands at least that was taken there earlier that we mentioned, and describes this like loving tacos already, but not having fish tacos, and especially in this style in San Diego. It describes this break where breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that's all he was having. He loved it. He met a chef called Carlos, who he convinced to give him his recipe. Can't find the last name of Carlos. There's a little video on Ralph's, or on Rubio's, as we'll discover, website, documenting this. And again, shows a little photo of this like napkin with the batter, and it's like flour and mustard powder and garlic. Can't remember whether I saw eggs or not. Beer for sure. Gets the recipe, goes back to San Diego, and in 1983 opened the first Rubio's in Mission Bay in San Diego, selling what he billed as the original fish taco. The chain grew to roughly 200 locations.
Wow.
And turned the fish taco into a SoCal staple.
Wow. Are there still 200 locations today?
That was at its peak. They are thriving and alive.
They're
still going,
exist, yeah.
But to the point of 200, I don't know whether they're still
that's strong.
Still doing that. San Diego kicks in some more though, and this isn't just a sort of give or a take part of the relationship towards the dish. Also codifies a few things. It locked in a double rather than single corn tortilla, always corn as you mentioned. The shredded green cabbage that we now expect, you mentioned crispy greens, repollo or repollo as they call it in Spanish, that supplants any use of lettuce, which could become soggy. The mandatory lime, they're using pico de gallo, same as salsa bandera, as far as I can tell, just a different name.
Yep.
And above all, introduced the crema, a mixture of mayo and sour cream, and oftentimes people putting a little bit of chipotle in there as well.
Sure.
And then everyone's serving it with, and I'm sure this is the same for everyone, wherever you get them, serving it with limes. So the Ensenada original, Angelito shark, single corn tortilla, cabbage, thin crema, they were doing the crema at some points, salsa bandera, and lime. San Diego shifts from that angel shark to more pollock, cod, mild whitefish that are common, doubles the tortilla. Same with the cabbage, but it's a non-negotiable. We can lock that one in.
Yeah.
Adds a bit of chipotle to the sauce, pico de gallo, lime, good to go. That is the spread of it's a nice conversation, I think.